We came strong. You'll notice I'm not going to give you an agenda of things we're going to cover. We got two monster guests today, and we're going to spend as much time as we can with both of them. The first one, as you can see, is Marc Ratner, who it was recently announced is going to be a member of the latest class of the UFC Hall of Fame in the contributor wing. And of course, later in the show, we're going to have Jon Anik, another stud in his realm as a play-by-play announcer for the UFC. What's going on, Marc? How you doing?
First of all, Jon Anik's the best. I'm so proud to have him as a friend, and everything good. We're closed here for the Thanksgiving holiday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so that's a pretty good thing. But I'll be here all day, or at least till 3 o'clock. So
yeah, Marc, I'm actually going to introduce Jon Anik as a future Hall of Famer. You're
absolutely
right. That dude is money. He is money. So his day will come one day, but of course, right now it's all you. And this is your fifth Hall of Fame that you'll be joining, including the four that are associated more with boxing. A couple based here in Nevada. Man, congratulations. You deserve it. And like everybody said in that video, that montage, you really, really impacted the UFC, the sport, getting it regulated everywhere. I mean, thank you. It was all we can continue saying to you, because you brought over that credibility of all those years that you worked, as the head of the Nevada State Athletic Commission. And right away, if Marc walked in the room, they were listening. Okay, what do you got to say?
First of all, it's much more than me. There was other people who traveled with me, and including Dana and Lorenzo, a man named my lawyer who was working with us at that time, Mike Mersch. And so I don't like to take credit for everything, because it was a team, and I always want to let people know that. I might have been the face, but there's a lot of other people involved.
Well, that's very, very kind of you to say, but, you wore the hammer. It'd be like if Goze got in trouble and he brought his big brother George to the principal's office. The principal would go, well, that's nice, but is your dad around, And that's what you were. You were that father figure that came around, and I really think you got people to sit down and listen. I mean, look, what'd you tell us one time? At least a couple dozen trips to Albany, New York? You never thought you would do that.
Maybe 29 or 30. We don't even know. We lost count, and mostly in the winter. That was the tough part. But as I look back on it, and certainly and when we finally got approved in 2016, it made all those 8 years go by in a second, and it was all well worth it. And New York's one of the biggest markets for us, and it's still a thrill when we go to the Garden or even Barclays. It's just it can't be a major sport unless you have New York, and I'm very happy that we can go there.
What was another one of the big obstacles? If I recall, it was either Toronto or Montreal had a problem with the cage. I mean, was there a number 2 after New York, and was it that one, or were there some other states that were also, huge hurdles to climb?
Massachusetts was a tough one, and Connecticut, but New York by far the toughest. Toronto, I think it was more the commission there. They just they didn't believe in it, even though I think the director was a martial artist, but maybe they didn't want to work as hard. And then finally, when we got it approved, and we had to go to Ottawa and meet with the different senators and those types in Ottawa, the first fight was 55,000, I think, with St. Pierre. So there was a pent-up demand, and what a great start there.
You got to meet with Ottawa's hockey team?
Not quite the hockey team, but at least the Senators.
Yeah, I know.
Quote, not the hockey team.
Every once in a while, I like to unleash a corny joke, and that was it. That was it for the.
Okay, yeah. That was good.
Thank you. Hey, what did it feel like? I mean, not to continue with the glowing remarks, but it's pretty special, a 5th Hall of Fame. But what was it like when you heard it and when you saw everything that happened on Saturday? What were you feeling inside?
100% surprised. I was just sitting there, as we do, monitoring the fights, getting ready for the Valentina fight. And one of our guys, Hunter, said, "Take off your mask for a minute." And so I said, okay. And all of a sudden, on the screens around there and on TV, there's this video, and I see my credentials, or I see a whole bunch of credentials, and I said, to myself, that looks like my credentials. And then I saw my face, and I heard the announcer say something about Hall of Fame, and I was shocked. The most amazing thing is that somehow my wife and children left for breakfast that morning and went and got COVID testing so they could go to it without my knowledge. And so after the video, there they were. So the whole thing was surreal. And the video, I don't know where they got all those pictures from, but some in my office, I guess, but somewhere else. So that made it very special, yes.
How close? Well, it was 2006 that you joined the UFC, correct?
Yeah, May of 06, exactly.
How close did you come to possibly not joining them? You had a great job as the head of Nevada. Was it a slam dunk, in other words, when they offered it, or did you have to think it over? And did you at one point even consider just declining it?
It took, I think, about 10 weeks until one day, I think it was in March of 06, Lorenzo called me and said, "Are you coming or not?" And I said, "Okay, I'll come, but we still have De La Hoya and Mayorga, or one of those kind of fights." It was definitely a De La Hoya. I said, "It's Cinco de Mayo. I'll come as soon as the Cinco de Mayo fight's over." And the next Monday, there I came. So,
in fact, I wanted to tie in one question with Albany. All those trips to Albany, do you remember having missed either a big football game, basketball game, or boxing match, and just sitting there in Albany going, "Man, like, you guys are killing me over here in Albany and in New York"?
I may have missed a UNLV game, but overall, no. I was never there for like weeks at a time. It was usually flying in and meeting with different political people, mostly on maybe on a Wednesday or Thursday, because they don't work too much either. They get out of there on Friday. So for the most part, I don't think I missed anything. Maybe the warmer weather. It was cold there.
Goes?
Mark, so like George mentioned, right now we're talking about the UFC Hall of Fame, but a lot of people are going to remember you for many things that you've been able to accomplish in your career. And right now I'm wearing my UNLV shirt, and we talked about that. UNLV basketball, there's boxing, there's all, you've done officiating. At the end of the day, is there maybe one thing you can point to that you want everyone to remember you for, an impact that you had?
Well, any impact would be in the combat sports world, but thinking about all the different sports and everything, and being involved, I think the biggest moment besides combat was refereeing football at Notre Dame and being on that field and having Charlie Weiss yell at me. I think that was my big football moment. So I think about that one a lot.
I was thinking about you yesterday because George brought up Oscar De La Hoya, and some of these guys have teased coming back and fighting, but Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson are going to actually do it. They're going to come back and they're going to fight. Although the rule set is a little strange and odd. Back in your day when you were running things, if something like this came about, would you authorize a fight like that? And if so, would the rules be somewhat similar to what we're seeing that's going to happen this weekend?
Well, we're always talking about health and safety and no headgear. They're wearing, I guess, 10-ounce gloves, what my understanding is. There'll be no live scoring, but it would have been a very hard fight to approve because you have two 50-plus-year-old men fight, and they're both two of my favorites. The one thing that I firmly believe, and other people are now saying it, we can call it an exhibition, but once a fighter gets hit, he's going to hit back. And so I don't think it'll be just soft punches. I think they'll go out and fight. So I'll watch it, and I just hope nobody really gets hurt, and they both make money.
Some of those names that we brought up, they're legends in the sport. Is there a particular face or fighter that you miss seeing? A, because they put on great fights, and B, just because they were fun to be around and just the best professional they could be.
Well, I was very blessed to be involved with Hagler and Leonard and Hearns and Duran. So, those were the great times. one of my favorite fighters, in a strange way, was Sonny Liston, and I still have the picture in my office here. And one of my all-time favorites that passed away so early was Salvador Sanchez. But when I see De La Hoya or Bernard Hopkins or most of these guys, they're all very friendly, and it's nice. I like seeing them at fights, and it's just a big part of my life.
In your tenure here with the UFC and being involved in mixed martial arts, you live here in Vegas just like us. If that was one of those night on the towns, right? You go out and have fun. Who are 3 people involved with mixed martial arts that you just connected with, that you would have a great time and maybe take to a ZZ Top concert or a Metallica concert? Who would be in that crew?
One I think of immediately, it would be Henry Cejudo, because I think Uriah Faber. I think he would be fun to go to a concert with. I mean, those 2 I would think of. One that I really got to know pretty well is Weidman. Chuck Liddell would be wonderful to be with at a concert, though people would be just grabbing him, and he probably wouldn't be able to enjoy it. No, there's a lot of great guys, and most fighters, when you have them one-on-one, are all great. It's just the entourage is sometimes get in the way, but for the most part, those are some of the ones I think of right away.
And Mark, I wanted to ask you something. It just occurred to me now. It's not on my list of questions that I wanted to ask you, but you talked about the 4 kings, Leonard, Hagler, Hearns, Duran back in the 80s, and what a golden era of boxing that was. In MMA, do you feel like there's been, doesn't have to be 4, it could be 5, it could be 10. Has there been a collective division or group of guys that kind of reminded you of that, of that time? But I'm talking about the UFC.
I think the sport's a little bit too new to have that kind of like a round robin, these guys fighting each other. But I think that could happen. Let's see what John Jones does at heavyweight. There could be maybe a trilogy there if he were to beat one of these guys. Certainly, Donald Cormier and John Jones had 2 memorable fights. And you're going to see maybe Conor after the Poirier fight, maybe he comes back and fights Nate Diaz. I think that would be interesting. Or even if Khabib would fight him again. So there's a lot of good fights, especially at 155 right now. But I always like the heavyweights in combat sports. Somehow that it's just a different feeling there.
Monday, we had our video franchise Spinning Backlick, and what we discussed was what's going on in the lightweight division, whether Khabib leaves or not. But we threw out some names like Tony Ferguson, Khabib, Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, and a few of those are going to fight each other a couple times, even Justin Gaethje. And I thought, man, I think that's our golden era. That lightweight division is so popping because not only are they all great fighters, they all have big names, and 2 of them are just massive pay-per-view stars, including the Irishman, Conor McGregor. But for me, I'm thinking that's kind of who I would parallel maybe with the 80s foursome that we talked about.
Well, no, I think that's very, very possible. And I hope that we can have all these fights, and the COVID thing, that's what makes it tough right now, because without fans, it changes the sport. Boxing's finding that out now. To pay the money everybody wants, we need the fans, and there's a different excitement when the fans are in the building. But yeah, the names you mentioned, those are all great fighters and would make great fights. So we're certainly hoping that that'll happen.
I wanted to ask you as well. Now we got Allegiant Stadium. We've seen the Raiders in there. It's a beautiful stadium. I'm sure you've probably toured it by now.
I'm actually working there for the Raiders a little bit.
Oh yeah, what are you doing there?
My title is coach to player cutoff operator, which means when the offensive and defensive coordinators are talking to the quarterback or the defensive captain, they can talk for a while. Then at 15 seconds on the play clock, I cut them off. How's that for a job?
Dude, do you need an assistant? That sounds fun, man.
Oh, it is fun, yeah. So I've been to Allegiant quite a few times.
Wow. I'm trying to think, like, when the defensive coordinator is talking to the middle linebacker or when the offensive coordinator is talking to the quarterback, But once it cuts off, it's not like you're left hearing what they would have said or not. It all cuts off?
It all cuts off. I can't hear either one talk.
Oh.
It would be fun, but it's some kind of a feed that I have to make sure is open for both guys, and then I cut them off.
That's interesting, because what if they're just about to give the golden nugget? Hey, don't forget they're about to blink, and all of a sudden they get cut off. Anyway, that's an interesting thought. That's pretty cool. But what I was going to ask you about Allegiant Stadium is, are you already envisioning the big boxing matches, the big MMA matches? I mean, your mind's got to be running circles how they would do it, where they would walk in from, and right? Have you already closed your eyes and just pictured the crowd in there and the lights and then the two combatants?
Well, absolutely. And you could have a huge fight there, whether it's boxing or MMA. It just really depends on who the fighters are. I think Conor, whether it's Khabib or Nate Diaz or something of that ilk, I don't know if he could get 60,000, but I think you could get a huge, huge crowd. Maybe, depending how you price it and everything, but I think you get it easily 40,000 and maybe more. No, I can envision that very well.
We're going to break the record. It's going to go over 60,000. I do believe it's going to have to involve the Irishman. And if Khabib does come back, I got to believe that's the two that can make it pop like that on an international fight week. But this pandemic just puts us in a spot where all we can do is dream for now. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I'm hoping for this vaccine to get out there and that we can get back in action, maybe with fans, maybe this summer. That's our goal. The Apex is a perfect place to have fights without fans right now, but we want to go and travel again, go to the big arenas and give the fans what they want. We may go back to Abu Dhabi in January. We're still working on that. That would be on January 23rd. Conor would fight either here or there. So that's interesting too.
By the way, speaking of the vaccine, do you want to be first in line, or do you want to let a month go by and see what happens, see what the scouting reports are from people that have taken it?
In the elderly group, I would be, I'm sure, in the first tier, or however they'll want to call it. So yes, I'll get a shot. Absolutely.
Very cool. All right. I think Goes says he's got another run of questions. Let me hand it off to him.
All right.
You guys mentioned the fans, right? And Marc, being involved in so many sports where fans do matter, there's that home field advantage, that home court advantage. You've heard how loud Thomas and Mac can get. In your opinion, which sport do you feel like is hurt the most by not having fans, as far as the advantage that you get at home?
I think college hoops. I think because they're passionate, it's a little younger demo for the most part. I think the fans really play a part. And the home court advantage is a little more there. It's probably worth 3 to 3.5 points. Football, it's a little more corporate, but still there's a home court advantage, home field advantage. I think the Raiders would this crowd here would be very, very electric. The Golden Knights have proved it. So I think all these sports need fans, and that's what we want. And hopefully, like I said, the summertime might be the time we can start seeing more fans.
I know it's early, but back to Hall of Fame. Have you given some thought about who you would like to induct you to give that speech right before you go on?
No. Have not. In that class, George St. Pierre's in it. It'll all, that's what it should be. It should be all about him. And I'll give a quick couple-minute speech, but it's about the fighters. And no matter what Hall of Fame, boxing or this, it's still. I'm a regulator. I'm a behind-the-scenes guy. It should always be about the fighters.
That was a good question, Goes. I'm anxious to know when he'll come up with the answer, and yeah, that'll be interesting. Okay.
You know who I'd like to see do it, George?
Who?
I think Kevin Iole would put a lot of thought into it and really convey just how much Marc has meant to combat sports.
That would be good, but I was thinking Lorenzo, because he's the one that fished him there, and it would also kind of bring him back into the UFC family for one night. Wow, we should do a poll on Twitter.
Yeah.
Either guy would be more than fine, but something I haven't thought about for 1 second. We don't know when the ceremony will be, and that's we'll see. That's the it'll be interesting, and I don't even know. Maybe they'll just do some videos, and you're going to have 10 people in that class, with 5 from this year and 5 from next year. So I think the ceremony will be a lot different. So we'll see.
You had 2 great jobs that people, sports fans, or even just human beings would love to have. And I wanted to ask you, what has been your favorite aspect of both jobs? And for those that don't know, Marc was also the head of the Nevada State Athletic Commission for many years. I think almost as long of a tenure there as with the UFC, maybe even longer now with the UFC. And of course, with the UFC, he's senior vice president of government and regulatory affairs. So what's been the best part of both jobs?
Well, I think in boxing, seeing, I liked when they were putting the fights together and they had to meet with both promoters, and even with King and Aram, when it was mutually beneficial. Trinidad De La Hoya, you had to work on both sides. There's officiating concerns, so I like that part of it. I like the weigh-ins. I like. I'd be nervous weighing these guys. There's the whole world's watching, so just seeing things come together. MMA is pretty much the same when we go out of America and when we self-regulate. I'm doing everything I did as if the Nevada Commission was involved. But the one thing that I've been able to do is knowing a lot of the commissions, I can work with them. And what I tell them is, look, we'll help you. I just want to make you guys look great. And we'll help you from behind the scenes, but you're the commission and we want you to take care of it. So I've been very blessed to be involved in both sports and combat sports. So it's been great.
And I gotta imagine that one of the toughest things ever was having to take $3 million away from Mike Tyson. Informing him of that couldn't have been pleasant day at work.
Well, and I have the big 3 things that happened in my boxing career. The Fan Man is still the most bizarre of them all. And then the bite fight, and then the last big fight I was involved with was Floyd and Zab, where Uncle Roger jumped in, Zab's father jumped in the ring. We had a melee and wild, and I got criticized because Roger jumped in the ring. They thought we should have disqualified Floyd, which all he did was get hit low and get hit behind the head. It would have been a real mistake if we would have DQ'd Floyd. He went to the neutral corner and just stood there and watched the melee happen, and then we let the fight go to its natural conclusion, and he won the fight. But when I hear people tell me we should have DQ'd him, that's the wrong idea.
Just a couple more, and again, very gracious with your time. Thank you as always. I wanted to ask you, before you joined in 2006, but let's call it around the time when Zuffa took over, as you were regulating the sport and watching them, from a distance, not being a part of them, did you think there was a chance they may not make it? Because as we all know, in 2005, it was that season of The Ultimate Fighter that really, really gave them a boost and I think gave them a second life, a wind or whatever. I think Dana White's even on record as saying as much. It was really, really close to closing up shop. But what were you thinking in those latter years as now a new company had taken it over? It was no longer SCG. It was Zuffa.
Well, remember that, and I think I've discussed this with you before, but in the late 90s, maybe 97, I went on TV with Senator McCain on a Larry King show, and Ken Shamrock and the former owner Bob Meyerowitz, and we debated, and I said we would never have MMA or the UFC with a sport that had no rules. And then in 2001, when we put the unified rules, I was on the phone with the New Jersey Commission, and then we, the Nevada Commission, approved the sport, and the first fight was Tito Ortiz, and I think Matushenko, that was in September '01. I could tell that sport was, I really believed it was going to go somewhere. I never thought to this extent. In my meetings with Lorenzo and Dana, Kirk Hendrick, we never discussed going anywhere out of the country. We discussed different states, and maybe you could help us in New York, but we certainly never talked about Brazil or anywhere else. So it's been very rewarding. I've been maybe not around the world, but all over the world. So it's been wonderful. Last
one from me. The guys, meaning the announcing team, had teased open scoring. That comes up every 6 months to a year, and a lot of people go, "I'd love it, I'd love it, I'd love it." I think we've discussed this a little bit more, but can you tell us, have you warmed up to it, or is it something that you don't think will happen? We always have new viewers, new fans of the sport that I think when they hear the powerful Joe Rogan and, of course, a former champ like DC and future Hall of Famer Jon Anik discuss something like that, it catches a little bit of traction.
Still against it. I understand what people say, but it changes the whole sport. It's easy to say that if a guy knows he's down two rounds in a 3-round fight, maybe he'll fight harder in the 3rd round. But there's also the guy who's up 2 rounds and he knows it. You just may try to lay and pray and get on top of them and just hold them down. This will sound strange, and people probably won't like to hear this, but one of the most iconic moments in combat sports, whether it's Michael Buffer or Bruce Buffer, in a championship fight, and the fight's over, it's coming to decision, and they say either still or new champion. It's such a moment you can't, and I would hate to lose that with open scoring. I know that sounds sort of shallow, but I believe that that's a very important point. In boxing, I've seen it happen where they know they're ahead after 4 rounds and they're going to go to the scorecards, and somehow a cut gets worse, and they say, "Hey, I was butted here," and I don't want to see that. And I've certainly seen in a 10-round fight with open scoring, a guy run for the last 8 rounds because he knew he was winning. So I'm still against it. Maybe an unpopular view with some, but I believe that, and I have not warmed up to it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, yeah, I think I'm against it as well, and I think I've gone the route of like an eye poke or a cup foul, or something like that, where someone's ahead and they in the 3rd round they can go to the scoring, and someone may be enticed to not continue or continue. And so, yeah, I for some reason, I guess I think I'm a pessimist in that regard, thinking in the worst case scenario. But yeah, I'm glad you nailed that part about the announcement and still and new and everybody just having an anticipation and discussing it with each other. Who do you got? 10-9, 10-9 the other way. I don't know. There's a little bit of fun in that.
Special moment, and no other sport has it. And so I like that moment. And you're everybody standing up and you're just waiting to hear one of the buffers say that. And Bruce is so dramatic about it. It's very cool.
Mm-hmm. Guys, make your predictions. How's UNLV Hoops going to do this year?
I'll go first. And all depends on the pandemic if they lose games. But I think that Coach TJ has recruited very well. They're going to be young. They're going to be quick. I think they do a lot of pressing, and I definitely think that they'll be in the upper half of the Mountain West. I don't know if they can get a bid yet, but I think that this is the start of something big, and I think he's a very good coach. And I also think Coach Arroyo in football, he'll turn it around. This is a tough time to turn it around, but with the new stadium, I think that's a recruiting advantage he's got now, and I look forward to his teams getting better and better.
How about you guys?
I think if we could have held on to a couple guys from last year, they would have made the tournament this year. But I think they might fall a little short of that. But I think they'll be better than last year. But next year, I think they'll be really good.
Agreed.
All right. All right, folks, there he is, Marc Ratner, a member of the World Boxing Hall of Fame, a member of the Southern Nevada Sports Hall of Fame, a member of the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame, and a member of the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Now he'll be joining the UFC Hall of Fame either later this year or next year, whenever there's the proper opportunity to have a ceremony that will include, like you said, the great George St. Pierre as well. Marc, congratulations. That was really, really warming to us. We've gotten to know you over the years, and it's well-deserved. And again, the impact you made in MMA is just tremendous. So thank you for all that hard work you put out there.
I really like to come on because we can talk about other sports, and so I'm delighted that we were able to do it so quickly. And I thank you. I did do a show with Jerry Cooney a couple days ago. That was fun for me too. So.
Oh yeah, at the fight with Randy Gordon.
With Randy and him, and I like talking to them also. So those are my two big shows.
I like to tease Randy because he voted against MMA, and he's kind of taking that on the chin and says, "Yes, I was a dummy," but he actually held up MMA in New York, and now of course he's a huge fan.
Right, that goes back a long time ago, and that was the same sentiment. We had a sport with no rules and or very few rules. So yeah, Randy was against it, and he's a big fan now.
Hey, Goes, we have the ability for the guys to say hi since John's already in the queue.
We could, yeah.
All right, let's have them say hi to each other.
Okay.
Jon Anik joining the program as well.
You know, I didn't want to be rude, but I was hoping I was going to get a chance to talk to this now 3-time Hall of Famer. I mean, what other Hall of Fames can we get Marc Ratner into? I'm sure we could find one.
No, I've got enough. And you're the Hall of Famer. I'm so happy for you and so proud of you. And what people don't understand about Jon is the homework he does and the notes he makes, and it's so extensive. And to be able to remember everything on a broadcast is even more exciting for me.
Well, I appreciate it sincerely, especially coming from you. You know, there's nobody's path that I would rather cross before a live event than Marc's. And it was interesting going over to talk to Marc, as I often do before the broadcast, as I did at UFC 255, knowing that his kids were essentially on their way or were going to be in the building, and he had no idea. So I'm glad that our production team was tight-lipped, and you should see, like, even our formats, there's no mention of Marc Ratner. It just says, you know, TBD. We were very tight-lipped, and, you know, you're just so richly deserving. And it sounds so trite when people sort of put over a human being and say, oh, but he's a better guy than even professionally. But with Marc, man, everybody, and even seeing like Diego Sanchez, you know, that summed it up well. Like, you won't let somebody cross your wake without a handshake and a smile. And that is a very powerful thing. And the last thing I'll say is that I had Marc Ratner on our Mouthpiece Boxing radio show for the first time in like 2003. And I was nervous, and he put me at ease pretty quickly. So, you know, I got mad love for you, brother.
Thanks. And I'm still a Patriots guy, and I'm looking for Belichick to get a couple more wins this year. So
Let's go.
I'm a Boston fan. So
let's go.